Some coincidences are so out there that they feel like they belong in a movie, but these are the real deal. Buckle up, because these coincidences are about to mess with your head. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 creepy coincidences that'll freak you out. 25. The twin tragedy. In 2002, two identical twin brothers in Finland died in separate accidents within 2 hours. And get this, both were hit by trucks while riding their bikes on the same road only 1.5 kilometers apart. The accidents had no connections whatsoever. Authorities were left scratching their heads, and honestly, who wouldn't be? The first tragedy was heartbreaking enough, but when the second one happened, people couldn't help but wonder if something bigger was at play. It's the kind of thing that really makes you stop and think. 24. Edgar Allan Poe's story. You'd think predicting the future would be a skill reserved for fortune tellers, but Edgar Allan Poe might have pulled it off through his writing. In 1838, Poe wrote The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, a novel about shipwrecked sailors who end up eating one of their own crew members to survive. That sounds pretty dark, right? But what's even creepier is that 46 years later, a real-life shipwreck had almost the exact same story. The crew of the Mignonette was stranded at sea and resorted to cannibalism, just like Poe described. One of the victims was even named Richard Parker, the same name as the character in Poe's story. Hey guys, just jumping in here real quick to tell you some exciting news. You know how you love watching our videos for amazing facts? Well, what if I told you that you could also have 500 amazing facts in the palm of your hand? That's right, we wrote a book. This one right here. What the facts are you talking about? And you can order it right now and have List 25 right in your library or on your coffee table or wherever it is you keep your books. It's available right now on Amazon, so click the link in the description and grab yourself and friends and family a copy today. 23. The creepy Chris Benoit Wiki edit. In June 2007, WWE lost one of its greats when wrestler Chris Benoit shocked the world with a horrifying crime. But what's even creepier is what happened before the news broke. About 14 hours before police arrived at Benoit's home, someone altered his Wikipedia page, saying he wouldn't be at an upcoming WWE event because of his wife Nancy's death. The edit came from an IP address in Stamford, Connecticut, the location of WWE's headquarters. Then it was updated again from Australia. The anonymous editor claimed they had just seen internet rumors, calling it all an enormous coincidence. 22. Flight 666's final journey to hell. No, that's not a typo in that title. For years, Finnair operated Flight 666 to Helsinki, which uses the airport code HEL. But on Friday, October 13th, 2017, yes, Friday the 13th, the flight made its final journey. Thankfully for everybody on board, despite the eerie timing and those spooky superstitions, Flight AY666 touched down safely without any drama. Still, you have to admit, that final flight date, it's the kind of thing that gives you goosebumps. 21. The mystery of Flight 19. Have you ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind? If so, this might ring a bell. In 1945, 5 US Navy planes disappeared over the Bermuda Triangle, sparking one of the most famous aviation mysteries ever. Flight 19, as it was called, lost communication during a training exercise, and no one could reach them after that. Naturally, a rescue mission was launched, with a Maarten Mariner flying boat sent out to find them. But the rescue plane vanished too. Neither the missing planes nor any wreckage from Flight 19 or the rescue craft was ever found. 20. The bullet that came back. In 1914, Henry Zieglin narrowly escaped death when his ex-girlfriend's brother shot him. Miraculously, the bullet only grazed Zieglin's face and lodged itself in a nearby tree. Believing he had killed Zieglin, the brother tragically took his own life. Fast forward to 1920, and Zieglin decided it was time to get rid of that tree, using dynamite. In a weird twist of fate, the explosion dislodged that very same bullet, and it struck Zieglin, killing him instantly. Despite the 6-year delay, fate finally caught up with him in the most bizarre way. 19. The two George D. Brysons. What are the odds? In 1953, 2 men named George D. Bryson made separate but simultaneous reservations at the Brown Palace Hotel in Denver, Colorado. Neither knew the other existed, but the hotel staff sure got confused. They kept misdirecting phone calls and messages meant for one George Bryson to the other. The strange mix-up eventually led to the 2 men meeting face to face. I wonder if they kept in touch after that. You have to assume so. Why would you not? 18. Anthony Hopkins' lucky book find. While prepping for his role in The Girl from Petrovka, Anthony Hopkins scoured London bookstores for a copy of the novel, but came up empty. Then, strangely enough, he stumbled upon a copy left on a bench at a train station. But it gets weirder. Later, while chatting with George Pfeiffer, the author of the book, Hopkins found out that the copy he discovered wasn't just any old copy. It was Pfeiffer's own annotated version, which had been missing for years. 17. James Dean's cursed car. James Dean's death in 1955 wasn't the end of the story for his Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed Little Bastard. After the fatal crash, the car seemed to carry some bad luck with it. While being transported, it was involved in several accidents, injuring people and even causing another death. And it didn't stop there. Parts from the wreck were sold and installed in other cars, which ended up in more deadly accidents. As if that wasn't strange enough, the car mysteriously disappeared while being moved, adding another layer of creepiness to its already unsettling story. 16. The book that found its way back home. It's one thing to find a beloved book in an old shop, but finding the exact same copy you owned as a kid? That's a whole new level of strange. In the early 20th century, American author Anne Parrish was browsing a bookshop in Paris when she came across Jack Frost and Other Stories, a book she adored as a child. She showed it to her husband, reminiscing about how much she loved it, only for him to point out something even more astonishing: her name written inside the cover. Yep, it was the very same book she owned as a little girl. 15. The choir that was saved by being late. Sometimes the right timing feels almost too perfect to be just chance. On March 1st, 1950, the Westside Baptist Church in Beatrice, Nebraska experienced a near catastrophe. The church's preacher had fired up the furnace to warm the building for choir rehearsal, but he was running late because he had to help his daughter with her outfit. Oddly enough, every single member of the 15-person choir was late that evening, for reasons ranging from car trouble to a math assignment, and even just feeling a little lazy. Their delay ended up saving their lives. At the exact time the rehearsal was supposed to start, the church exploded due to a furnace malfunction. If they had all been there on time, none of them would have survived. 14. The Sinatra song that sparked chaos. It sounds unbelievable, but between 2000 and 2012 in the Philippines, singing Frank Sinatra's My Way at karaoke could get you killed. Literally. 6 people died after having a go at the old-time favorite. The first incident was odd. The second, downright bizarre. But by the third, people didn't hesitate to call it more than just a coincidence. Whether it was off-key singing that sparked arguments or the song's bold lyrics rubbing people the wrong way, My Way just seemed to set people off. It got so bad that many karaoke bars ended up removing the song from their playlists to avoid more tragedy. I wonder about the Limp Bizkit song My Way. 13. The meteor that struck the Comette family's house. Meteors are rare enough as it is, with the odds being struck by one sitting at around 1 in 1.6 million. But in 2011, a meteoroid made its way through Earth's atmosphere and crashed into a house in France. Thankfully, no one was hurt. But here's the kicker. The house belonged to the Comette family. I kid you not. A meteor struck a family named Comette. Not the family, but their house. 12. Stephen Hawking's cosmic timing. Stephen Hawking was one of the greatest minds of the 20th and 21st centuries, building on the work of legendary scientists like Galileo and Einstein. But there's an odd connection that ties these 3 figures together. Hawking was born on the 300th anniversary of Galileo's death. Not only that, but he died on Einstein's birthday. It almost feels like these brilliant minds who expanded our understanding of time, space, and everything in between were linked by the universe itself. 11. Robert Todd Lincoln's close call. Robert Todd Lincoln, the only Lincoln child to outlive both of his parents, had a long and distinguished career, but it almost didn't happen. One day, while waiting for a train in New Jersey, Lincoln lost his balance and fell onto the tracks. Just in the nick of time, a passerby grabbed him and pulled him back onto the platform, saving his life. Oddly enough, that good Samaritan was Edwin Booth, brother of John Wilkes Booth, the man who would later assassinate Abraham Lincoln. To make things even stranger, Lincoln was there when Presidents McKinley and Garfield were assassinated too. 10. The beginning and end of Life magazine. Life magazine was a huge part of American culture in the 20th century, filling shelves and waiting rooms everywhere. Its very first edition, released on November 23, 1936, featured a newborn baby in its first interior photo with the caption, "Life Begins." That baby was George Story, who would grow up to become a journalist. And here's where the story takes an odd turn. On April 4th, 2000, Life magazine announced it was shutting down for good. Just a few days later, Story passed away from heart failure. 9. Maarten de Jonge's incredible luck. Maarten de Jonge, a Dutch cyclist, might not be a household name or famous for his racing career, but he is very familiar with creepy coincidences. In 2014, he came dangerously close to being on not one, but two doomed Malaysia Airlines flights. First, he was set to board Flight 370, which mysteriously disappeared, but changed his plans at the last minute. Then, he booked a seat on Flight 17, which was tragically shot down over Ukraine. Again, he switched flights just before takeoff to save money. You can't make this stuff up. He dodged two tragedies by a hair. 8. The Curse of the Omen. The 1976 horror classic The Omen didn't just terrify audiences, it felt cursed behind the scenes too. From the start, strange and unsettling incidents plagued the cast and crew. Gregory Peck, the film's lead, had his plane struck by lightning while flying to the set. In a bizarre twist, the planes of producer Mace Newfield and writer David Seltzer were also struck by lightning on separate occasions. Even more terrifying, Peck narrowly avoided disaster when he canceled a flight that later crashed, killing everyone on board. Then, special effects supervisor John Richardson and his assistant Liz Moore were involved in a car accident that mirrored one of the film's most gruesome scenes. Moore was tragically decapitated, similar to a character's death in the movie. And as if that wasn't enough, an animal handler working on the film's baboons was killed by a tiger the day after filming wrapped. With so many creepy incidents, it's easy to see why people believe The Omen was cursed. 7. Catherine Eddowes' Mary Kelly alias. On the evening of September 29, 1888, Catherine Eddowes was arrested in London for public intoxication. While being held, she gave the police a false name, Mary Kelly. Little did she know, both of those names would go down in serial killer history. After being released from custody, Eddowes became the second-to-last victim of Jack the Ripper. Her body was brutally mutilated, and then, just weeks later, the Ripper's last victim would be none other than Mary Kelly, the exact same name Eddowes had used while in police custody. 6. Joseph Aigner and the Mysterious Monk. Joseph Aigner, an Australian painter, struggled with life and tried to end it all. Twice. First at the age of 18 and again at 22. But on both occasions, a Capuchin monk showed up out of nowhere and stopped him. By the time Aigner turned 30, he was sentenced to death for his political activities. And once again, that same mysterious monk stepped in and saved his life. Aigner eventually found fame as an artist, but at 68, he finally succeeded in taking his own life. And you guessed it, the same monk, whose name Aigner never learned, ended up officiating his funeral. 5. The man who saved two falling babies. In 1937, Detroit's sweet streeper Joseph Figlock became an accidental hero in the most unconventional way. While he was working, a baby fell from a fourth-story window and landed right on him. Figlock managed to break the baby's fall and both survived the incident. A year later, Figlock was out sweeping again when another child, a 2-year-old this time, fell from above and landed on him. Figlock somehow found himself in the perfect place not once, but twice when it mattered the most. 4. Hitler and the Wild Chase. Before Adolf Hitler became one of history's most notorious figures, he actually had ambitions to be a painter. Even though he eventually gave up on his artistic dreams, his passion for the arts never really left him. One of his favorite pieces was The Wild Chase by Franz von Stuck, a dark and ominous painting. The coincidence? Von Stuck completed the painting in 1889, the year Hitler was born. The Wild Chase shows the Germanic god Wotan leading a wild hunt followed by an army of the dead. Due to the parallels between Wotan and Hitler, many believe this painting in fact predicted Hitler's dark future and the devastation he would bring. 3. The 27 Club. The 27 Club is a name given to a group of famous musicians, actors, and artists who all died at the age of 27. It started in the late 60s, when we lost legends like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison from The Doors, and Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. In the 90s, Kurt Cobain took his life at 27, followed by Amy Winehouse, who passed from complications tied to drug use at 27. What's even spookier is that Amy Winehouse once admitted she was afraid of dying at that exact age. With more than 60 celebrities joining since the early 20th century, the 27 Club is just about the definition of a creepy coincidence. 2. The man who survived 2 atomic bombs. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, a draftsman working for Mitsubishi, experienced not just 1, but 2 atomic bombings in 1945. and he lived to tell the tale. On a business trip to Hiroshima on August 6th, he watched in horror as the US dropped the first atomic bomb. Despite being seriously burned, Yamaguchi and his colleagues managed to survive by taking shelter. The next day, he returned home to Nagasaki. In all honesty, he probably thought the worst moment of his life was behind him. Then, incredibly, while he was at work 3 days later, the second bomb hit Nagasaki. Again, Yamaguchi survived, although he suffered from radiation sickness and a fever for a week. Remarkably, he lived to the ripe old age of 93 and passed away in 2010. 1. The first and last World War I casualties. At number 1 on today's unforgettable list is a powerful yet bizarre coincidence from World War I. John Parr, the first British soldier to die in the war, and George Edwin Ellison, the last, were buried just 7 yards apart, with their graves facing each other in St. Symphorien Military Cemetery. At the time of their burials, no one knew they were the first and last British casualties, so their graves weren't positioned with that in mind. The cemetery, established by the German army, even holds soldiers from both sides of the conflict, which I think makes their proximity even more symbolic in hindsight. Today, their graves stand as silent sentinels, marking both the beginning and the end of Britain's tragic role in the war, underscoring the heavy toll of the conflict on all the lives it touched. And that's it for today. If you enjoyed today's list, you'll definitely want to check out the one we did on 25 images captured moments before tragedy. In that video, I covered one Daredevil's fateful last stunt, the devastating Carterton balloon tragedy, and haunting photos taken just moments before disaster struck. It's shocking, heartbreaking, and it'll make you see life in a whole new light. Interested? Just click on the link right here, and I'll see you next time.